What's up guys, my name's Hugh Miller and this is a video series I've been wanting to make for quite a while. I've had the scripts written out for at least a year, I guess, and I'm finally getting around to putting things together. So yeah, today I'm going to start a new two-part video series talking about the development of the first 32 Nancy Drew games, which is really, it's something I've been very passionate and interested in for the last while, I guess. I've done a lot of research in this, and and I've made some pretty cool discoveries, and I want to share those with you today over these next two videos. So the goal of these videos is really just to try and provide you guys with a bit of an in-depth look at how the games that we know and love were created from concept all the way to the final product. It's also trying to provide a bit more Nancy Drew content and entertainment, while we're still in the limbo between games. I've got a bit of a couple disclaimers here, I guess. First off, I've never worked for Her Interactive. I've always wanted to, never have. I never got the chance to visit the company, although Her Interactive, if you're watching this, I would love to come visit you guys. You guys know how to contact me. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so because of that, I never actually got the chance to visit and see a game through partial development, which is really unfortunate. I really wish I would have had that amazing opportunity, but yeah, the stars never aligned for that, which is really too bad. All the information that you will be presented with in these videos is coming right from videos or blog posts created by Her Interactive, conversations with past and present Her Interactive employees, or just from information I've gathered directly from the game files themselves, which there's a lot of information that I've found just from dissecting the games and looking at the files, seeing what files are named what. It's really a fascinating experience. In this first video, I'm going to be covering the evolution of the game screen sizes or game resolutions, length of development time, and video and audio files and their formats. I'll also be discussing various terminology used in the development of the games. It should theoretically be a shorter video than part 2, but we'll see about that. The Nancy Drew PC games are truly a fantastic game series. They started getting released in 1998 and are still being released today, although in a very different style. That's content for another video, however. Instead, I'm going to be going back in time and discussing the old style of games and how they evolved from Secrets Can Kill all the way to Sea of Darkness. When you load up Secrets Can Kill, one of the first things you'll notice is that it isn't exactly a high-resolution game. In fact, it's far from it. The first 15 games were in a 640 by 480 pixel resolution, or 480p for short. This was due to the fact that making a game in a smaller resolution meant a smaller game size. Even though the game was released on 2 discs, nowadays the game is considered to be an incredibly small game. On top of that, back in 1998, computers were nowhere near as powerful as they are now. If you want proof, just look at these game specs, or even the recommended specs for optimum performance. It was even highly recommended that players only have the game open and no other programs, as it would take away processing power that could be used for the game. Nowadays, people have a game open and they're streaming it at the same time.
Oh, this is so fun. All right, we're going straight junior.
Dear Dad.
Okay, if you haven't had enough Secrets Can Kill.
Another reason that the game was such a low resolution was because HD didn't exist for games. It wasn't a thing. However, that being said, it wasn't until Midnight in Salem released that the Nancy Drew games finally adopted the widescreen 1080p resolution. And if you have a computer powerful enough and a monitor that can run it, you can play Midnight in Salem in 4K, although it doesn't exactly look the greatest, but it is possible. Anyways, getting off track here. Even though the original game resolution was 640 by 480, a lot of the screen was taken up by the graphical user interface, or GUI. The actual size of the window into the game was 536 pixels by 292 pixels. As many people know, the first 32 Nancy Drew games were 2D games with 3D aspects. So technically, there's a term for that called 2.5D, and that's kind of where the original games sat. All the environments were 3D locations rendered into 2D images. The character animations were pre-rendered 3D files lip-synced with audio, except for Secrets Can Kill, which had 2D character animations. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to call the rendered location/video files scenes, as that is what they were internally referred to. I'll talk about that soon. The first 9 Nancy Drew games all had their scene sizes as the exact same 536 by 292 image size. The only exception was in Secrets and Kill. All the Nancy Drew games feature areas of the game where you can spin around in one place infinitely. Those scenes are called nodes. They are a single scene made up of multiple frames. Secrets and Kill had larger node scenes than any of the first 9 games. Instead of the 536 by 292 resolution, they were 536 by 376. This was due to the fact that while in the nodes in Secrets and Kill, the player has the option to move the screen up or down to further view the area that they are in. This mechanic was first introduced in Her Interactive's The Vampire Diaries from 1996. It was scrapped after Secrets and Kill was released and was never used again. When The Secret of Shadow Ranch was released in 2004, Her Interactive slightly increased the resolution of the game window, but not the game itself. The overall resolution was still 640 by 480, but this time each scene was now 620 by 375 instead of 536 by 292. This meant that the scenes were just that much more clearer and rich. The scene size changed once again when Danger by Design released in 2006. The scenes were now the same width as the overall resolution, and 10 pixels taller than the previous 4 games, thus making the resolution 640 by 385. Things started getting interesting when The White Wolf of Icicle Creek released in 2007. The overall game resolution changed from 640 by 480 to 800 by 600. However, the scene size remained the same. In fact, Her was still producing scene sizes 640 by 385 up until 2011 when they released The Captive Curse. At that time, Her Interactive finally started making the scene sizes suited to the game resolution. Since the game was now 800 by 600 and the GUI took up the top and bottom of the screen, the new resolution of each scene was 800 by 480. It would have been great if they started making the scenes that resolution back with ice, but due to the file size and storage limitations, they couldn't. When Tomb of the Lost Queen released in 2012, Her bumped up the resolution significantly for the final time using the old engine. The games were now 1024 by 768 in overall resolution, with each scene being 1024 by 690. This offered a much more detailed scene, and it really worked in Her's favor, as I personally think that games 26 to 32 are some of the best looking games in the series. For the first few years of Her Interactive's game development cycle, they were only releasing 1 game a year. However, in 2001, Her Interactive hired Max Holacek. Retailers were dropping the prices of PC games, and he decided that Her Interactive could adapt well to this change. His goal and one of his everlasting achievements was ramping up the company's release schedule from 1 game a year to 2 games a year. This was a little rocky at first, as it meant that the game production schedule had been significantly decreased, but it quickly became second nature to the staff as they proved time and time again that it was possible for them to achieve. Her Interactive really upped the ante when they released the Cody Capers, Cody Pops the Case in 2007 and started, and quickly stopped, the Dossier series in 2008 and 2009. At that time, they were making 3 games a year. Just want to point out that it was publicly stated. The Dossier series was stopped because, according to past Her Interactive CEO Stuart Mulder, one issue that they ran into was that fans of the core line of Nancy Drew mysteries didn't feel that the Dossier line met their expectations. They did indeed start working on the 3rd game in the series, Ship of Shadows, but it never got finished. Although, in today's world, Ship of Shadows would probably be an incredibly popular game. You can read more about the behind the scenes of Ship of Shadows in a blog post where I interviewed Marie Tokuda, who worked on the Dossier series up until it was cancelled. The link for that is in the description. Even in 2010, Her Interactive remastered Secrets and Kill, which meant they were still making 3 games a year. Assuming Ship of Shadows released, that would be the first year they released 4 games in 1 year. They resumed their 2 games a year schedule in 2011 and continued until 2014. In 2015, they only released 1 game, then didn't release anything for the next 4.5 years. I'm not counting Codes of Clues, as it's not a part of the PC series. The Nancy Drew games have used a number of file types throughout the years in regards to video, audio, and script files. From SCK to SSH, Her solely used a custom video file called an AVF for each scene. They continued using it until 2005, when Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon was the first game not to include that kind of file in its system. There's a few programs hovering around the internet that can open such files, as someone has cracked the code on how those images were compressed into a very small but still lossless video file that the game could access. For all things in compression, decompression, and general development, we turn to Wayne Sykes. He worked at Her Interactive from 1995 while they were still a spin-off company of American Laser Games until 2004. During his time at Her, he designed and programmed all the internal 2D and 3D game engines, art tools, and asset management systems for the games on MS-DOS, Windows, 3DO, and Mac systems. He also developed a proprietary data management system for compression and real-time decompression of game data and lossless video and animation systems. He was also in charge of creating a scripting system for managing all game activities. Essentially, he created the skeleton for the games, and the development team filled in the gaps with all the video, script, and sound files. Another system that Wayne created was that of the SIFT-tree file system. I'll talk about it more in the next video, but basically, it's a system that can store many images and script files into one very compressed yet accessible and manageable file. But like I said, we'll talk about that next video. Next, let's talk about scripting languages. For the first several years of Nancy Drew Games being developed, Her Interactive used a proprietary scripting language. What you're seeing right now is an original source code file for Stay Tuned for Danger. I've read quite a bit of code in my life. This is unlike anything I've ever seen, personally. To a professional coder, it might make sense, but for me, I cannot make heads or tails of it. It wasn't until 2010 that Her Interactive changed their scripting language from their proprietary one to a language called Lua. Lua is a language that can be learned by anybody. Apparently, it's super easy to understand and is way more versatile when it comes to coding the games. Back to the video files. Starting with Ghost Dogs and Moon Lake, Her Interactive began using BINC video files for animations. When I talk about animations, I don't mean character animations. In the early days, those were stored in the SIFT-tree files. The animations I'm talking about are the cutscene animations. Slowly, they started integrating BINC video files into their games to take over the AVF video files. Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon was the first game to only use BINC video files for the animations and scene files. Her has used the same file type for sound files since SDK, called an HIS file. I could be wrong, but I assume it just stands for Her Interactive Sound File. It makes the most sense, but like I said, I could be wrong. Something that has actually changed quite a bit from SDK to C are the naming of the sound and video files. In the early games, Her used very short file names to organize all their sound files. For instance, if we look at the unused credits wrap that was in the game files for Sequence and Kill, the file name is CredTrap, which is a shortened condensed version of credits wrap.
Like a bullet from a gun, she arrived on the scene.
For the dialogue, let's look at Daryl Gray's voice lines. They were all labeled with a D for Daryl with a number following it.
You look like you're going to make an excellent addition to Paseo Del Mar High School student body.
For Connie Watson's dialogue, hers would be the same but with a C instead of a D.
Hi, I'm Connie. You're not from around here, are you?
In the newer games, when it came to dialogue and sound effects, they began extending the file names to names such as cabinet_close_metal_hinge_squeak_1_SFX in order to be really descriptive with their file naming, and sounds like this. The character dialogue featured the character's initials followed by the gist of what they are saying in their dialogue. For example, one of Dagny's lines is titled DS_firstmeet08_SFX.HIS and sounds like this.
Metaphors, Nancy. Keep up with me here.
And that's pretty much it for this video. There's a lot of information to digest here, but it's really going to be useful come part 2 of the series. I really hope you learned something about the evolution of the development of the Nancy Drew games. What are your thoughts on all this? Did you know the games had gone through this much change over the years? Is there something you're more interested in learning about? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video when I break down the development of a Nancy Drew game using Sea of Darkness as a prime example. Have a wonderful rest of your day.